Now that we've talked about how a marriage is formed, let's discuss ways that it can end.
Historically, divorce has not always been an option. Prior to the Reformation, England was predominantly Catholic. Because Catholicism did not observe divorce, marriages only ended with the death of one of the parties. Marriage was considered a sacrament by the Catholic Church. However, the Protestant Reformation changed this view, emphasizing that certain marital circumstances violated the values of Christianity. This idea carried over to the colonies. However, slaves were not able to divorce through the same processes, as they were not viewed as citizens. Divorce was not common throughout the country. The majority of divorces occurred in New England, while divorce was uncommon in the South. The colonists believed that the strength of a community started with the strength of the family. If there was a weak family, then divorce was seen as a way to move from a weak relationship to one that could help strengthen the community. At this point, only fault grounds were available for divorce, meaning that the innocent party sought a divorce from the guilty party. Traditional fault grounds included adultery, desertion or abandonment, and cruelty. To prove adultery, one spouse had to show that the other had the opportunity to have sex with someone else, as well as the desire to do so. Abandonment required that a spouse voluntarily left the marriage for a certain period of time without intending to return. Additionally, the deserter had to do so without the consent of the remaining spouse, and they had to have left without a valid reason. Physical abuse of a wife was tolerated as a means to redirect behavior and keep the marital home in order. Cruelty referred to physical abuse that was unconnected to these purposes. While fault divorce filings were premised upon wrongdoing, there were also ways to defend against those accusations. Common defenses to fault grounds include connivance, condonation, recrimination, and collusion. Connivance includes not only one party assisting the other to cheat, but consenting to it by not preventing it. Condonation, on the other hand, occurs when one party discovers that the other has been unfaithful, but forgives them anyway. A much less common defense is recrimination, when the alleged guilty spouse accuses the innocent spouse of also being guilty. Finally, collusion occurs when the couple works together to create fault grounds. Working together like this to create marital problems can also be seen as connivance. No-fault divorce began emerging about 50 years ago. Instead of requiring one spouse or the other to be at fault, no-fault divorce allowed the parties to dissolve a marriage that no longer worked. In order to be granted a divorce, one of two things must be proven. One, the parties must show that the marriage has been irretrievably broken, or two, that the parties have lived separate and apart for the statutory time period. No-fault divorce has not been accepted with open arms. Critics state that no-fault grounds undermine the seriousness of a commitment of marriage, making it easy to terminate a relationship even at the expense of children. Those in support of no-fault grounds have linked a decrease in domestic violence against women, as well as greater individual freedom in choosing to end a marriage as positive effects. Some states have enacted reforms to limit no-fault grounds in an effort to curb the high divorce rate. In states recognizing mutual divorce, both parties are required to consent to the divorce rather than just one. In those states where one party does not agree to the divorce, the couple must remain married until the youngest child has reached the age of 18. Other states have focused on the strength of the relationship prior to marriage, requiring couples to participate in premarital counseling. The reasoning behind this is that couples are more invested in the marriage by participating in couples counseling. Still others have delayed the waiting time between obtaining a marriage license and the performance of the ceremony. 3 states have enacted covenant marriage. Couples choose to have either a regular marriage or a covenant marriage in these states. In order to qualify for a covenant marriage, couples must participate in premarital counseling and sign a document which states that they understand marriage is a lifelong commitment. They also agree that they will not seek a no-fault divorce. Because of its basis on religion, as well as the possibility of one party coercing the other to enter into an agreement, covenant divorce has not spread to other states. Like divorce, annulment is another way to terminate a marriage. Unlike divorce, annulment treats the marriage as if it were never valid in the first place. Annulment is also more accepted within more traditional religious cultures. The law recognizes 2 reasons for an annulment. Either one or more of the parties lack the capacity to enter into the marriage, or there was some type of violation of a marital restriction law. For example, Diane and Richie become engaged. They plan on having 3 children right after they get married, but Diane fails to tell Richie that she is unable to have children. If Richie finds out about Diane's infertility after they are married, he can choose to have the marriage annulled, or he can choose to do nothing and ratify the marriage. Similarly, if the parties have violated some law restricting marriage, that union can also be annulled. Let's say Brian gets married to Gretchen without either party knowing they are related. When they discover they are brother and sister, they may have the marriage annulled on the grounds that the marriage would have been forbidden based on incest. When a marriage is annulled, it is treated very similarly to a divorce. Although an annulment treats a marriage as though it never happened, states have refused to treat children as though they were illegitimate. Instead, children of an annulment are treated as children of divorce, where each parent has an obligation of support and custody is awarded. If both parties entered into the marriage with good faith, meaning that they believed that the marriage would be valid, then spousal support can also be awarded. Finally, property can be distributed just as if the couple was obtaining a divorce. Legal separation is the final way to change the marital relationship. The biggest difference between a divorce and a legal separation is that a separation keeps the marriage intact. Because the parties are still united by marriage, they are unable to remarry. Other than those distinctions, legal separation and divorce both address child custody, child support, and property division. With both annulment and divorce, the parties also live separately.